by Nayaswami Hriman, my humble self, and my wife Padma. We broadcast at noon, and then the recording is saved to our Ananda Washington YouTube channel and to our Facebook channel, Ananda Seattle in Bothell, and on our website. Anyway, so today I have selected for you a potpourri of wisdom of Paramhansa Yogananda. This goes back to 1926, about winter time, January and February of 1926. So Yogananda had not been here very long, and yet his English and writing seems to be as strong as ever. So several subjects, and I'll start with what's at the top here. He writes, loyalty to a spiritual custom. Now, by spiritual custom, I think for most of us we could say loyalty to one's religion, or loyalty to one's spiritual practices, or loyalty to one's spiritual beliefs, that lacks sincerity and lacks conviction is hypocrisy. Obviously, there are millions and millions of people who belong to a certain faith tradition, but who don't give it much mind, as we say. And so one would have to agree with Yogananda in saying that such people are hypocritical, meaning they might give lip service to their faith, but not really live it. Then he goes on to say loyalty to the spirit of a custom without clinging to its forms is wisdom. But I want to caution you on that because, while this was 1926, here in 2021 has evolved the concept of that person who is spiritual but not religious. And so it'd be easy for such people, as many as there in fact are these days, to take his statement here and say, well, we're wiser. The problem with spiritual but not religious types of people, in my view, I can't really say my experience, but in my view, is that it's easy to be critical of religion. In fact, it's rather popular. But that by itself gives away the kind of meanness of spirit that underlies one's rejection of religion, even if they perhaps pretend to be spiritual. My dear brother Devon belongs to what he calls the Church of Devon. And although he's only joking, I think that's how a lot of people, spiritual but not religious, see themselves. But I challenge such persons to ask whether they have any discipline. Do they meditate daily? Do they truly seek God? Are they seeking the will of the Father? To what extent do they enable their beliefs by seva, by service to humanity, and so forth? Do they really walk their talk, in other words, or is it just all talk, in which case it too is hypocrisy? But then he goes on and says, loyalty both to the form and the spirit is the greatest wisdom. You know, I've said before, and recently at our Sunday service was the quotation from Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, urging Arjuna, who asked the question, that approaching God, the infinite, using a form that is beloved and dear to one is the easier path than trying to imagine, visualize, or make contact with the absolute infinite spirit. And so it is here on the more day-to-day level. Well, it's not more day-to-day. They're both day-to-day. But on the level of our spirituality, even if not conforming to anything outwardly like religion, it needs a form. You have a form, I have a form. We speak a language, we live in a culture. We are influenced by many things around us and how we behave and speak and our attitudes. And so even if one doesn't have anything amounting to a faith tradition, outwardly speaking, doesn't engage in any religious practices, rituals, or prayers, there needs to be some form, because that form grounds our beliefs or aspirations in something meaningful. Okay. Then he goes on, along those lines, he says, how can you nourish yourself by only listening to a talk on food? You do that, you're going to starve. So to know food only theoretically is to remain hungry. So he who seeks new doctrines continuously, but doesn't put them in practice in his life, is in a state of continual spiritual starvation. That describes an awful lot of people that I have met in my many decades of teaching and sharing. People who go to wonderful places like East-West bookshops, who buy numerous books strewn all over their home for reading at various times, rather than perhaps introspecting upon themselves. This spiritual indigestion, or people who sort of collect meditation techniques. They take TM, they learn Kriya, they do Kundalini yoga and so forth. But it just makes us, it reflects our restlessness and makes us additionally restless. Then a few other things. When we serve others, we serve ourselves. Therefore, don't think I will help others, rather think I will help my world, because I cannot otherwise be happy unless I include the happiness of others with my own. Okay, I want to move on. There's other things here, but because some of my earlier broadcasts had to do with health and healing, which is a subject of our studies in our special Kriya Satsang groups this fall, some very interesting points I think Yogananda makes here. He says, no disease is incurable. Some diseases are beyond the reach of medicines, he writes, which are by their nature limited. When a disease is persistent and long continued, and medical aid and other ordinary methods fail to cure it, then we call it chronic or incurable. The fault of deficiency is in the medicine and its inability to cure. But that fault then is illogically, by the way we speak and our attitudes, transferred to the disease to call the disease incurable. Not so. The medicine is uncurative, so the doctors call the disease incurable. Well, understandable, but he's pointing out that that's not technically right. But the power of the infinite is unlimited and can heal all disease. Medicine has its uses, he says. Why deny facts? This is something Swami Kriyananda often pointed out to us. I know a group of people here, for example, who, as if to protect their body from something, refuse vaccines. Now, there might be legitimate reasons for vaccines. I don't really want to get into that argument. My point is that if we don't use standard medicine because we fear the body, then we're attached to the body. Okay, so that's why deny facts. Okay, so medicine cannot help you if you just talk about it and don't use it. Similarly, faith cannot cure unless you use it and not simply talk of it. In mental or spiritual healing, one must have faith to, now listen to this, faith to burn the boat to walk on the sea. Now, what the heck does that mean? Burn the boat to walk on the sea. In other words, you just got to do it. You got to prove your faith. St. Paul says faith is the evidence of things unseen. That translation, or those words, are a little bit confusing, I think, to most people. Your faith is the evidence. I mean, that's what he's saying, but I think people, when they think of evidence, are looking outward for something. But faith itself is the evidence of knowing that has not yet been proven by material things or happenings or circumstances yet. Okay? Your faith, pray believing, Jesus said, your faith, which will save you, along with your works. Faith is the evidence of something deeper, some knowing, some reality that is transcendent but has power over the material plane. Okay? So, the subject today isn't so much faith healing, but nonetheless, medicines can stimulate the flow of life force in the body to effect healing, but it's the life force that does it. And the life force is one step to soul force. And soul force has produced life force. Life force has produced the physical body. And so I think many people on the spiritual path, on various spiritual paths, not just that of yoga, nonetheless default to the body and the language and attachment to the body as it relates to their illnesses. The energization exercises are a great bridge. See, prana is a bridge between the soul and the body, between the soul and the ego. And someday maybe I'll talk more about the chakras, which are the gifts of the Holy Spirit for the healing of the nations, it says in Revelations. Even though there's lots of books on chakras and workshops, I think very few people really understand what the chakras represent. But the power of healing lies within us, and that's really the point I'm trying to make. So I think that's it for today, and we'll see you, or maybe you'll see us, on Monday. Okay? In the meantime, many countries and cultures will celebrate Halloween. I don't know really why, but Halloween spiritually can reflect our past, and we want to resurrect the ghosts of our past and our ancestors in order to acknowledge them, because if we cannot acknowledge them, we can't put them to rest. That's why the next day is All Saints' Day, because when we have cleared the debris of our subconscious